Hey, my good man, Chad. It's almost football season, but it's really not almost football season. But
It's always football season.
well, for you it is. I know you probably watch more religiously than anybody I know, considering all the other alternative leagues and stuff. But we're here today because you know football because you played it. You've been a badass football player or fantasy football player as well, and you've won a bunch of our home leagues. And I respect your opinion, and I wanted to dive into this year's hot takes, and I wanted to do it in July because I can't get enough thinking about it, and I've got a lot of my decisions made. So, are you pretty pumped up about this year? Do you think it's going to be a good year for fantasy, or anything? I don't know, jumping out to you so far?
Is it going to be a good year for fantasy? I was going to say, it's going to make a joke about the Pope or something. It's not going to work though. Yeah, because any day of football, any year of football, any modicum of football is bliss on earth. So yeah, it's going to be amazing in ways that pass all understanding.
Okay, but I mean, like, are you excited about certain players?
I've got opinions, yeah. I've got opinions, and they're not popular ones, probably.
That's why we're here. I think one of the reasons we're doing the show is because we talk so much football for so long, and you've had some amazing calls in the past. I remember you liked, I think, Philadelphia. No, you liked the Chiefs to beat Philadelphia that year. You liked the Seattle to beat Denver that one year. And I mean, I've had a few as well, but you've definitely shown me that, like, in the last hour, you'll just be like, no, it's coming this way. And then I don't know. I always love hearing your unique takes because you're coming from left field or the bleachers or whatever. So, but yeah. So why don't you tell everybody how you got into fantasy football and what your life was like as a football player?
How did I get into fantasy football? Well, I played the real thing first. So to me, I think the honest answer to that question is I've had a you-know-what full of the folks in they used to be called rotisserie leagues, making sure or never missing an opportunity to express how much they know about football, never having played it down. So that's crack cocaine for me. I got to put them down, right? So that's right.
Wait, what's crack cocaine?
When someone who's never done something never misses an opportunity to tell me how good they are at it or how much they know about it. Because knowing about football and playing it are vastly, and I mean infinitely and forevermore eternally times 11 to infinities, really, really, really different things in a constellation of meaningful and powerful ways. And so
you get off by putting people down that think they know things about football.
Put them down was a funny way of saying I got to take them down. I got to take them down. Not put them down as in insult them. But I just to me, there's no substitute for sweat equity, and you can't tell me you know as much about football if you've never played it down. You just can't, because there's no substitute for the real thing. You can know it intellectually, but man, it's the king of sports for a reason. There's so much more to it.
I mean, I remember playing, we know each other forever, but I remember playing one year and it was nothing like I ever thought, just because, I mean, I was playing the line, which is just miserable. And it was just constant head crunching and just trying to memorize, plays and positions, and just no glory for me, unlike you being a fast fullback and winning probably, I don't know how many games for the teams. But anyway, I guess I brought you on because I wanted to really build up some of our fantasy discussions publicly, and at least share some of these unique wisdoms we have. I want to be really controversial. I don't want to just talk about the most basic things. I really just like that you're bold and you're ridiculous, and I'm, I consider myself bold, but I'm nowhere as bold as you. And the point of this is to hold us accountable a little bit, put it out there in the community, share some insights, see if anybody agrees or disagrees. I mean, I've done fairly well. I've finished 15th in the main event in 2000. Well, it was 4 years ago now, and I was on one entry. So putting almost $2,000 down on a fantasy football league was a big thing. So my buddy Jon and I did it together, and we drafted incredibly. Like, it was phenomenal. When I say that, it's not who you think. We drafted, Diggs, when he had his coming out party with Josh Allen. We had, Kenyon Drake, who ended up not doing that well, but ended up costing us quite a bit in terms of finishing 15th when we could have finished first if we just sat him and changed the defense. But we had Robbie Anderson, Corey Davis, Miles Gaskin, JD McKissick. We did a little bit of waiver stuff, but mostly it was just looking at these contexts, looking at these situations, which is a lot different from what you're talking about, which is more player evaluation, but it was more context driven that made us get there. And then the following year after that, finished third in the consolation, almost finished second, or almost finished the top 20 in the main event again on 2 entries. But that win game in Buffalo just totally screwed us when the Patriots ran like 36 out of 37 times, and Tyler Bass missed an easy field goal, and Diggs couldn't catch a ball, and we had Diggs and Bass, so we took third in the consolation, and then 2 years ago finished third in the Pros versus Joes. So it's been. I mean, I bet on horses, as you know, for a living. It's my life, and I'm good at it. And I've won a couple million doing this. Almost 30 first place wins, and I think about 10 second place wins. So I am all about winning, and that's all that matters to me. I'm very competitive, and that's why I think it's fun. You and I can challenge each other here. So today, I think the idea is to come in with some hard takes, controversial takes, guys we want, guys we're willing to take a stand on, depending on how big of a stand we can discuss, and then also talk about guys we're going to walk away from completely and avoid. So in the bigger the take, the juicier the response, and hopefully the accolades come at the end of the year. So let's kind of dive in here. So I think the best way to look at this is whether we're talking, let's look at this through the redraft or season long lens, because I know you're not a big best ball guy. I was almost in the finals last year best ball, but it was my first year, and I love best ball, but I season long waiver wire fab, trying to figure out how much you want to get on your guys. It's just really intellectually challenging for me. But let's get into you, my man. Let's go back and forth ping pong here. Give me a guy that you're keen on this year. And again, the way we're defining this is if you're taking him in the 6th round, he should be finishing in the 5th, 4th, or 3rd round to be considered a success. So in terms of points at the end of the year, but fire away, man. You first, and then I'll come at you.
Well, so the first thing I would say though is I consider I think we're asking the wrong question fundamentally. I don't see fantasy that way, and I don't see selecting people or not that way. So it's hard to apply, it's hard to frame it that way for me. So what I will say is the folks in the know, largely, probably most of whom have never played, I'm assuming, I think they have it wrong in terms of their rankings. And so the problem is they're using those rankings to inform their draft order, right? So that's why, to me, it's the wrong question. I think we're starting a little too far up the food chain, or at least not in the right place on the food chain. So I think the right thing to talk about first is player evaluation. And so I guess my take is that my player evaluation actually is folding in more context, not less. So to that point, the first thing I would want to say is, let's start with quarterback, right? We probably should. I think that Brock Purdy is wildly misunderstood somehow. I don't understand how yet, but misunderstood, and therefore way undervalued. He's considered a tier 3 quarterback, double-digit rankings. That's blasphemy. That's downright sacrilege.
He did almost win MVP. Actually, that was very interesting last year. How I actually bet. What's funny, dude, is I bet 2 things. I bet the Kansas City Chiefs to win the game, and I came back and bet Brock Purdy MVP as a cover, because I felt like if they're going to win, he's going to get the nod. And then obviously Christian McCaffrey is unstoppable and godly, but I just was like, yeah, this is a good angle to take. So anyway, I'm on semi on board with this, but keep going.
Right. So that makes my point. So what I'm saying is these folks in the know, it's sort of laughably the case for me that they're exactly not. And not just kind of, but in every way that they could be, as though they're trying to not know. So,
we don't have to get mad at people for just doing the best they can, but obviously the rankings are the rankings and they're all statistically backed up. But how does Brock Purdy go from right now being a guy that's going to be taken 9th, 10th, 11th, and you can get him cheap? Where do you think he finishes in the season? Like at the end of the year?
I think he finishes in the top 3. So he's either 3 or 3A. It's hard for me to. It's really hard for me to separate him from Justin Herbert. I think.
Well, Justin Herbert's going in the 13th or 14th round, so he's probably not even the top 15 quarterbacks given the new, the Harbaugh run only, basically getting Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins.
And it just gets wilder, right? That's what I'm saying, is that's just backwards and not just a little bit.
But keep in mind, when we're talking about fantasy, we're talking about points. We're not talking about who's the better player, because there's better football players, right? There's guys that are great football players, but are not good fantasy guys.
I know the point. I know that you win by getting points, and I'm taking that into account. For sure, it has something to do with kind of player you are, but it also has to do with that context. To me, the context is almost as important as the player himself. So that means scheme, that means coach, that means geography, that means weather. So yeah, very well aware of all that stuff. And yeah, I'm still going to say that Brock Purdy is going to be a point annihilating machine.
So you think the Niners are going to, I mean, first of all, they got to sign Ayuk. I'm sure they will, but so the whole way Brock Purdy has a good season is because Kittle, Ayuk, Debo, and McCaffrey catch a lot of balls. So you think they're going to be basically relative to last year, you think they're going to throw more than they did last year?
I think that they're not going to be as dominant as they were last year. So yeah, to some degree that, but also I just want to make the point, no, I don't need him to be throwing to Ayuk. I don't really care whose name is on the back of the jersey. So that's what I'm saying. He's and their offense and the way that offense is coached, you can the way that the weapons are deployed.
Yeah,
it's 6 one way, half dozen another. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that Ayuk and Kittle and I'm not saying those names don't matter. Okay. What I'm saying is that they don't sign Ayuk, it doesn't change my take. So he's that good.
Okay, so I'm gonna interject here and go a little deeper with what you're saying. If you believe he's going to be like a top 3, top 4 quarterback, I mean, to me the top 2 guys, Allen and Hurts, were just a clear leap ahead last year, and there's a lot of changes going on with both offenses actually, with losing Diggs and also losing, having a whole new offensive coordinator in Philadelphia. But I think like when you look at a take like Purdy finishing that early, and it's crazy. I actually really, really respected him like last year, and I was on board with you throughout the years. I couldn't believe that he was still considered this, last man take and whatever. And to even further that point, he didn't lose a Super Bowl. He did everything perfectly, pretty much. There was that one missed block, on a substitute that cost him the Super Bowl, and he could have easily been heralded as like maybe the next, Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, whatever, with all that momentum. But so I just want to like kind of frame what you've said. In other words, you believe that Purdy will outperform Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, Anthony Richardson, Dak Prescott, Jaden Daniels, and Jared Goff. So you think at the end of the year, when it comes down to it, and I guess there's a couple ways to say this too, because to me, if Brock Purdy finishes the 6th best quarterback in fantasy football points, and he's not 4th, you still win your take. If he finishes 7th, you could probably still win this take. But to me, it's about the point differential. So as long as he's, within reason of the top third guy in the league, you win. So I completely respect this. It just comes back down to, again, visually. For the most part, I agree with you. Tape, I'm with you on the tape. I like it. He's making pretty good decisions. He's getting better. He's younger. He doesn't have a big ego. Sees it field well. Got one of the best coaches ever. And it's it's really about matchups at this point too. And he's gonna have a hard schedule this year. The Niners are gonna have one of the hardest schedules. And again, is Ayuk gonna be there? Is he gonna be disgruntled? So I guess I'm not hard against that. So I'm gonna say nice. Like I'm gonna say I don't have a problem with that.
Well, the other way to look at this, though, because I heard you mention Hurts, I don't see any universe in which Jalen Hurts should be ranked above or taken before Brock Purdy. No universe.
Okay,
not based on what happened. I mean,
well, again, you're talking fantasy football points. Like Hurts scored like, I don't know, 50 or 100 more points than the next closest quarterback. So he was about the equivalent of, I don't know, 3 to 7 points extra a game. And Purdy had a great QBR. There's no question that, like, talent wise, I think that some people would make the case they'd rather have Purdy. But with a new offense coordinator and Kellen Moore, whatever, it's going to be. It could go a lot of ways. You got Barkley there now. They might not do the tush push with Kelsey leaving. So I don't. So I disagree that Jalen Hurts should be taken above Purdy. But do I think at the end of the year the value is going to be on Jalen Hurts and not taking another guy in the 3rd or 4th round and then taking Purdy late? No. So I'm with you in making the decision to walk or to skip over Jalen Hurts. I'm not sure necessarily that with this new offensive coordinator that they don't go off. And I mean, it's just too hard for me to do that. But let's is there anything else you want to say on Purdy before we go to the next guy?
No, just long live the Purd.
Okay. Well, the Purd, I don't think I've heard that one.
Fight on the Purd. I'm gonna get a t-shirt. I'm gonna get a shirt made.
I actually, again, I like him. I don't have a problem with that. Okay, so on my side, I think I will start with my first take of a guy that I really, really, really am drafting, like, I don't know, at least 30% in best ball and underdog, or trying desperately to get him in the main event or football guys. I will be airing a main event at some point so people can see what it's like when you put $2,000 down on a team. I'm gonna start with Tyjae Spears. And the thing about Tyjae Spears to me is he's going in the 9th round, basically 8th, 9th, end of 8th and 9th round. And here's a guy who is nimble. His metrics are pretty impressive, and especially with given his ACL situation. And yeah, he can go down. Yeah, they brought in Tony Pollard, but I'm not a Tony Pollard guy anymore. And you could make the case that, yeah, it was one season and he had that leg injury. You got a new offensive situation, completely different mindset, a quarterback that flings the ball. They're going to be behind. He can catch the ball. He can move, incredibly well after the tackle, before the tackle. He's got vision, and I think he's going to win that job over Pollard. Now, do I think it's going to happen in the first 6-7 weeks? No, but I do think as the season goes on, Pollard's probably going to be Pollard, and yeah, he could always revert back. But there's a little slight bias that I'll say just because of me taking him and struggling a bit with him in the past. But I will say that that system and looking at the wide receiver core, not really being impressed with that wide receiving core. Yeah, they're fine, they're decent, they're solid performers. But to me, this guy could really make noise in the end of the 8th round here in these redraft leagues like Main Event. So I would pretty much key on him if you're on the left side of the board, meaning 1 through 6 positions. I don't really see a scenario where he doesn't get at least half the carries and he's going to get those catches, and it's just really a question of who's going to get the touchdowns. And if he gets a couple extra touchdowns this year, he can move up and be a guy that should have been taken in the 5th or 6th round. So what do you got, anything to add to that? Or
so what's interesting is that's a really nice pull. I watched him at Tulane. And I do my homework 2 years in advance. So I have in my notes section on my phone who I want 2 years from now and why. Because I'll watch games and I'll remember the game that I saw and why he made it to the notes section. So I liked him when he was in college, but I liked him for certain reasons, and they don't lend themselves to touchdowns. Not that he won't score any, of course he will. He's quick, but he's also sudden, and that's a good thing between the 20s. And he'll hit some home runs. He doesn't really have the size for the between the tackle stuff down tight. So it'll just be a little. He'll score. Theoretically, might not score as many touchdowns. So in a universe that includes beefier guys that are still sudden, I don't know. He in particular makes it on my list, and this is really what it comes down to. Is for me. That kind of a pick comes down to what kind of league is it? Is this best ball or is it redraft?
Everything we're talking about is PPR, in my opinion.
Well, so he definitely, is a feather in the cap for that.
I'm sorry, we're talking like season long and best ball too. I would take him the same.
Okay, so to me, he's more valuable as someone I can pivot to at some point in the season, and he's not going to be my breadwinner. I'm not going to live and die on that hill. He's a very nice player. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I liked him at Tulane, but the reasons I liked him don't really align with him being someone I take and then can't move off of. So
okay, so let me give you a quick example then. Roughly in the same area of the draft, you got. Would you take Tony Pollard over him?
So I was almost going to say I suffer from the same bias. To me, it's a pretty justified bias. He was real sexy 2 years ago, right? Yeah. So the only thing I would say, and I am not a Pollard apologist. He broke my heart last year. I love him as an athlete and as a running back. Last year aside, I like him. The problem is that last year scares me.
Well, yeah, we just don't know if it's that from that injury or if it's a mental thing or,
right.
or an offensive line thing, because Tennessee's got a little bit of improvement on offensive line this year too. So
that's the other thing I would say is I haven't had a catastrophic injury, but I've had some injuries that have made me I never had. If you have to think on the field, you're done, especially at that position. So
that's a good point.
Very rarely did I ever have to think. Thank God for everyone, right? But
and you played, fullback, and you scored a lot of touchdowns, so you kind of have even more insight into that position.
Yeah. So there was one injury that was just weird. I had torn some cartilage, and the way that works is I would be walking along or running along, and it would feel like suddenly out of nowhere, it'd feel like somebody shot me in the knee. So that not knowing when it was going to happen it added a layer, and it made me a little bit slower for a minute. So you can't afford to be that as a player. So you're right. To your point, perfect take on that part of it. Having said that, on the other side of my mouth, what I might say, so
you would go interchangeable with Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. You're just like 50-50 is how you do it, or would you take one out of the other, or what ratio?
First of all, I wouldn't be in that position, but gun to my head, for the sake of argument, it is a coin toss for me, those guys.
Okay, and that's kind of what the industry thinks. So if I'm gonna give you 8 players real quick, and then we'll move on to the next guy that you could take ahead of Tyjae. So would you take, and you can. We'll just say yes or no. Would you take Brian Robinson over Tyjae Spears in Washington?
Yep.
Okay. Would you take Joe Burrow over Tyjae Spears?
Yep.
Would you take DeAndre Hopkins over Tyjae Spears?
Yep.
Would you take Hawkinson off the injury?
No.
Dallas Goedert?
No.
Jackson Smith and Jigba?
Yes.
Brian Thomas, rookie from Jacksonville?
No.
Zach Moss?
No.
Xavier Worthy?
Yep.
Worthy usually goes before him. Jameson Williams in Detroit. Dalton Schultz.
Yep.
Javonte Williams.
No.
Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler.
Yep.
Yes. Well, so fair. We have a disagreement, which is great. I would take and going back to quarterback, I would take pretty much every one of those quarterbacks ahead of Brock Purdy, just so you know. So good. We're on different lands. Going for the same destination, which is fantasy.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Okay, who's your next guy that you would take that you want to stand up for?
Saquon. I don't know what is going on in this world.
Well, he's okay. That's an interesting. So right now, he is being taken in the early turn on the second round of like the main event stuff. So he's like, if you're drafting 12th, he'll go 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. So right in that area. So you're saying that you would take him where in round 1?
I'm going to frame it differently again. You may have to interpret what I mean by this, but so he's right now, I think, somewhere around anywhere from like 6th to 8th, ranking wise. To me,
in terms of like running backs,
yeah,
he's definitely the 6th running back.
Yeah, to me,
at the lowest.
At the lowest for me, he's 3.
Okay,
he's
so you have McCaffrey above him, Bijan above him, and Breece Hall above him.
So Breece Hall is my baby. At Iowa State, I would have married that guy if I could. So he's coming off an injury.
Interesting.
He's coming off an injury. We're
coming out with him on the fucking hot takes.
No, love is love. I mean that, but he's coming off an injury, but that's okay. We're very, very good at fixing that injury now. I don't worry about that at all, especially at the time of year when he injured it. So we're good.
So you would take. So you're basically what you're saying here is you would not take Jonathan Taylor or Jahmyr Gibbs above Saquon Barkley.
Nope.
Yeah. Okay.
No universe in which way. But okay. I just want to be very clear. To me, Saquon and Brees, I have no problem. They're interchangeable for 3 and 3A.
Okay. I don't think that's a take. That's a take because when you get into the first round, I mean, my God, all of them are amazing. It's really hard to knock any of these guys. And again, when you get toward the turn, you got Taylor and Laporta and Gibbs and Barkley and maybe Marvin Harrison. So to me, would you take him above Puka Nacua?
Okay, so real quick, I just want to. It would take years off of my life if I didn't say this. I absolutely love Jahmyr Gibbs between the 20s. I love Jonathan Taylor. I have since Wisconsin, since his very first years in Wisconsin. Gun to my head, though, I have to take Brees or Saquon.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, would I take Saquon before Puka?
Yeah, so there's like 4 or 5 other guys that are around that. So clearly you could take him. You're going to take him over Gibbs and Taylor, and it sounds like it's not a big reach, but it's obviously that's a call, like a big one. So to me, the real question is here: would you take him over one of these 4 guys? Because you're not going to. I mean, you said maybe interchangeable with Brees, but would you take him over Justin Jefferson?
Yes.
Would you take him over Puka Nacua?
Okay. Yeah.
Would you take him over Garrett Wilson?
Oh yeah.
AJ Brown.
Yep.
Okay. So that is a serious take. And I say that because if you're in best ball redraft, anything like
sorry, we're sticking with PPR, correct?
PPR.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is here, I mean, I've listened to a lot of these guys. I mean, I have so much respect for Sigmund Blooms and Matt Waldmans and all the other, I mean, JJ Zacharyson and Pat Crane and all these guys. Like, I've just heard so many, every podcast, thanks to all them, because they all chime in with some angle or something, and there's plenty more that I could name off. But I did hear Waldman, speak about Barkley as well, liking him quite a bit. And there's a few others that have questioned potentially the whole Jalen Hurts, Kellen Moore scenario. At the end of the day, I just don't feel like you're going to lose anything if you take Barkley as your if your first running back or your second running back. So I've been taking him as well as you, not as early as you, but I can't. This is a very interesting point that I'll bring up right now. You have to look at your side of the draft to make the decision what position player you are willing to take. If I'm on the far right side, I need a receiver bad, because when you come around the second to the third, the end of the third to the fourth, I don't really care for as many of these wide receivers in the third or the fourth round. So I'm my hands are tied. So I have to take a wide receiver in the first round. But in the second round, I would take Gibbs over Barkley just because of the upside. I would take Barkley over Taylor. It's close, but I would take Barkley. So I'm with you. I support this pick to a point, but like I said, because of my strategy and the guys I like later, like, you can talk to me about Saquon Barkley all the day long, but I can't take him in the first round, because in the second round I'm not going to get a good enough wide receiver to be my wide receiver 1. So these are the kind of like little intangibles that come up when you're drafting, especially against the best in the world or best in the US on main event and stuff. So if you were to, and again, you're going to have a whole different strategy probably in the third round or fourth round with wide receivers. So we can come back to that, but that's my reason why I would not take him in the first round. I would take Puka, Garrett Wilson over him. I'm not as keen on Justin Jefferson and AJ Brown for right now, and I wouldn't want AJ Brown with Barkley to have that combination. It's too thick, too incestuous in a league and like this. But anyway. Anything else you want to say about that? So
what I would say is there's nothing, I can't, it's hard to find anything wrong with what you just said, unless you're me. So what happens is there's still nothing wrong with what you just said, but I'm not beholden to that sort of, I would consider that pretty conventional thinking. Or at least what most of like the people who win these tournaments, that's how they view it, I'm assuming. I look at it as, well, that's what my superpowers are for. So my superpowers are seeing talent, watching a game and seeing things that the rest of you don't see. And so that means I get to pick players before they're sexy, before anyone knows about them. So that's
Barkley's been sexy for a while.
I know. but I was on him before anyone else was. I was on him in college and was able to draft him pretty late because people like knew about him but didn't know the things that they should have known about them, which would have made them salivate over him. So
we had that injury. I think that was the big
even
thing.
Really the point I was making. The point I'm making is I over and over and over and over again have known about. I did miss on Puka. I did not respect that, so I missed on that. But other than that, but the reason my notes section is full is it's full of rookies. These are notes I'm making while they're in college or high school. So I don't need to. So the number ones, I might see a number one that no one in the universe sees. So I don't need to pick them early. I don't need to feel that pressure. So I can go ahead and stick to my plan, knowing that guy's still going to be holstered later on because nobody even knows who he is. So,
but that's when you say he's in your number one and you're saying holstered later. I mean, Saquon Barkley was a top round one running back taken.
No, he's not a good example. I'm not saying
that year.
I'm not saying he's a good example of my wisdom, not at all. At all.
But you're just alluding to the fact that you identify rookies that stand out and that have something special that's based on maybe your eyes as a football guy and you're a tape pro, and you can go through and you can see things, and maybe it's the eye of the tiger, maybe it's the little agile quickness, or being able to see things before they happen, or understanding the difference between gap running or zone running or whatever the terms that you would be way more familiar with me, and that can again give you value probably more later, I'm guessing, in the the draft.
Right. So it means I don't feel that. So you mentioned feeling the pressure, like, hey, I got to pick a wide receiver now because I'm on the right side of this thing, so I got to pick a wide receiver. I don't need to feel that now. It's not an absolute. So receivers are a little bit different of a position. You got to treat them like quarterbacks. They have to make the same read. So typically they're better a little bit later in the season. But so you still need to know, like, you still need to be able to pick the conventional number ones, but I don't have to be afraid of that.
Well, I think in this case, we'd have to go deeper and talk about like what the build really looks like. And I know you haven't drafted, I mean, I've probably drafted, I think almost 100 best ball teams and at least 7 or 9 fantasy football or football challenge guys or football guys from FFPC, and I'm going to do one live main event. But so I think that we can table that conversation until another episode when we can start talking more about what your builds look like later if you do take Saquon in the first, at the end of the first. And again, I don't really have a huge challenge on that. I mean, I'm sure some people will, but not like it's a nice take. That's a very sexy take. So I will go and counter your Saquon with I'm gonna say Evan Ingram. In the third round, at the end of the third round. I wouldn't take him early in the third round, but I think this is a situation where, again, going to structure of draft, Evan Ingram, I want a top 6 tight end this year in the premium tight end league where you get 1.5 for reception. I want a premium guy, and when I look at all these other guys, they're all solid, okay, but to me, getting the guy who's coming in 6th at the 6th position when he could easily be 3, 4, or 5, I'll take it every time. So to me, there's no reason to not wait on tight end until the end of the third round. Okay, so I think there's enough talent in the second and especially on the 2-3 turn to take some really nice running backs too. So for me, it's more a function of the context. And obviously, this guy can explode. They just lost Ridley on their team now, so who's going to get peppered with the most touches probably in the red zone? And obviously, Kirk's Kirk, and he can be streaky too. And all these guys are streaky, but I just feel like there's that connection between Evan Ingram and Trevor Lawrence. So to me, at the tight end position, he is the best value right now. And I don't see anything wrong with a lot of the other guys. It makes me cringe to take Dalton Kincaid that early in the second round. Kind of same with Trey McBride and Sam Laporta. They're all great. But for them to perform at that level, and sometimes you have to do that because you need a top tight end, in my opinion, to win $1 million in FFPC. So I can't really knock it. But what I will say is I'm not going to do it unless I'm forced to do it because of my position and I can't get Ingram or whatnot. But that's I think it's fairly universally accepted that Ingram is a safe tight end pick, and getting him at the sixth tight end is fair. What do you think about that?
I mean, I really highly value tight ends, just period. I don't think that they're weighted as heavily as they should be. So I think the way it informs structure, I don't know. I've never really aligned with it. So I guess what I'm saying is I love tight ends, period. And I would say Evan Ingram he's frankly, let's be honest, he's a glorified wide receiver. He's a wide receiver in somewhat of a tight end's body. The guy is really fast, straight line speed. So he's a kind of a matchup nightmare. Having said that, he's not going to see as much of the ball as other people. He should. If I were him, if I had him, I'd throw him the ball every time, but that's just not what's going to happen. So and you mentioned Dalton Kincaid, I would never forgive myself if I had a chance to get him. I wouldn't pass him up. I don't care where I see him, and here's why. Not just because of who he is and what he is as a player. That is enough, but base scheme-wise and relative to who's calling the plays now and who was calling the plays toward the end of last season, and look what happened to his participation. It was such a sin that he wasn't used more earlier in the season, so it's no happy accident that they made the switch. And when they did, in his infinite wisdom, where did he go? And so that's also not a happy accident. So all that's going to happen this year is it's going to be all Kincaid all the time. And what that's going to do is open things up for others in the world where it doesn't include Stephon Diggs anymore. So I don't have any problem because I was madly in love with Ingram at Ole Miss. So he's a beast. I just am a little more beholden to Dalton Kincaid for reasons beyond what he is.
And I think it comes back down to it's every question to me is not a question of the player by themselves. The question is, for me, would I rather take Michael Pittman, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Isaiah Pacheco, Kyle Pitts, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon? No. So to me, it's also by default. Now, do I think those guys are fine? Sure. It's hard to knock somebody in the third, fourth round and say never. But in my case, I'm not going to be taking any of those guys, period, on any of my teams. And so I'm going to take a very hard stand in FFPC stuff where I will always live and die in Evan Ingram if he's there. And there's another guy, I might as well just go into my third dude, and we'll come back to the second. Not to monopolize here, but the third guy that I really do see is completely palatable, and he's starting to get a little disrespected right now in the FFPC stuff, but that's Rachaad White. And to me, Rachaad is the prototypical guy that can easily step up here in this third, fourth season, whatever. He's got the right volume and he's got a guy with this Erding dude that they got who's not going to be a full time. He's not going to really eat much into it. His metrics are pretty suspect, right? There's some questions on how he can, whether it's break tackles or just yards per carry. There's some questions there. But here's the difference. When I watch him play, there is a spark sometimes that I see in some of his plays that shows me that there's upside. And that's the thing. It's a football. Yeah, I played for a year, whatever. I've watched football for 20-some years, maybe 30-some years. But to me, there's just these little separators. And when I watch Joe Mixon, no thank you. And when I watch Josh Jacobs, no thank you. That doesn't mean the system isn't going to change things, right? And Josh Jacobs is going to a new system, and so is Joe Mixon. And they're both getting older, and Rachaad White is younger. So I feel like the age thing and the visual tape stuff is interesting. And also it's the matchups. And in this situation, to me, Baker Mayfield stepped up so much that he's got something to prove. Tampa almost got even a step further in the playoffs this last year. I just see them as winning a lot of games, and he's so reliable. Yeah, it's again about relation. What's the relation? Who would you take instead of him? I'm not going to take Joe Mixon, even though he's going to get a ton of volume. I just don't trust him. And I don't like there's some personal things there too, maybe about some of his behaviors and attitudes and stuff. But to me, it's more of a, can't you see Joe Mixon maybe getting injured again, or just maybe given the CJ Stroud, are you going to really give him the ball when it's 3rd and 2 or 3rd and goal? Would you really give it to Mixon, or would you rather throw to one of the 3 amazing wide receivers? So there's a lot of these little things that counter this. But so to me, it's either Evan Ingram or it's Rachaad White coming around that end of the 3rd to the early 4th turn. And I love Pacheco. I think he's amazing. I actually would consider potentially taking him ahead of Rachaad White. but the matchups and the fact that they brought in, a couple other players this year, and they finally have a good wide receiving core, I just don't really trust him to get a ton of volume inside the 3, 4, 5 yard line for the touchdowns, because Andy Reid is Andy Reid. So to me, it's and again, I've got Knox on Waddle and the offensive line in Miami this year. I'm just really questioning whether Tua's going to get hurt. And I do like Mike Evans, by the way. I would absolutely take Mike Evans. There's under any circumstance, I could never knock anybody for taking him. But like I said, when you come around that 3-4 turn, if Evan Ingram, if I don't have a tight end, take a tight end. And if you've already got a tight end, or if you do have Evan Ingram, I think Rachaad White is clearly like being disrespected. It's to me the best like RB2 you can take, relative of that third, fourth group. But did you have any thoughts on Rachaad White coming out of school, or now that you've seen him a couple years?
Well, first thing I would say is I don't want to meet the person that wouldn't take Mike Evans. I don't understand you, and I think it's downright un-American.
He's still good.
Oh my gosh, 10 seasons in a row. Anyway,
just watch. Did you watch when he played against Jalen Ramsey? It's like the guy, he beats Jalen Ramsey.
He's not comfortable.
Yeah,
I don't care how good you are as a defender. He's not comfortable.
Yeah.
And I don't care how many of you there are. Anyway, frankly, you stole my thunder. So my take, this is on what you said, is I just want to hug you. Like, so.
Oh, you like Rachaad White that much?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to add one layer to it. But before that, I'm just going to agree with every fiber of my being that yes, because for me, here's why. He's big body, fast, and has hands. So what I'm going to do if I'm an offense is I'm not just going to feed him the ball between the tackles and watch him eat. And yes, he's going to do that, particularly down low. So he's going to score touchdowns. But also, I'm going to go for long handoffs with him. I'm going to get him in space and get that beef moving down the field, north and south. So and especially in the PPR league, and for all of these reasons, I love him. And so just one other layer on top of that. I don't know that you're going to love this part of it. I don't know that I've not seen any tier 1 running back. I consider him, because of how I believe he's going to be used, or I guess crucially for me, how he should be used.
Yeah.
In a world where I'm in charge, anyway. For me, he's tier 1, and I know that's not sexy, and he's not.
What do you mean that's not sexy? That is sexy if he's fucking tier 1.
Oh no! I mean, it's not shared, not common. It's a hot take to me, but I don't know that anyone considers him that good. I think I guess what I'm saying is, he's undervalued. So I don't think it's a popular opinion.
And he's starting to get a little slightly disrespected, dipping to the end of the fourth now a little bit. But I'm glad that you said that. I did not expect you to like him too. I mean, I could. There is a world where I could see him finishing as an RB, like one, fringe 1-2. But again, it comes back down to, can Tampa win? I believe they can, as long as Mike Evans and Godwin stay healthy and they have that offensive line. And it's just, it's again, they move the ball well, they play smart. Baker Mayfield has humbled himself. So to me, it's just the division's weak. They have a nice series of matchups. It's a very ripe setting. And again, Bucky Irving is, from what all the things I've read and heard, is just not a guy that's going to be a legit, 50-50 split or anywhere near that even. And the thing about Rachaad White that I really love about him, which is why I didn't draft him his first year, was because he had some struggling pass blocking. But again, now it appears that some of that's turned. And I know that there's been some coach negative speak about him kind of around some things, but I do believe that this is his potential come out here. So I'm going to take that risk there, because again, I don't have faith in all these other guys around him. It's not that I don't. It's hard for me to argue with some of the other players I mentioned, but it isn't. It's like I'll take Rachaad White over Pacheco, Mixon, and Josh Jacobs, and James Cook every day of the week. And it's like, at that point, I want another running back. Right? I'll take for me, structure this year. It's a very easy, simple way. If in my top 7, I need 2 wide receivers, or basically my top 8, I need 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, quarterback, and a tight end. It's kind of vanilla, but it's what I'm doing this year, because I want best of breed guys early enough, and if I'm going to be betting thousands of dollars on a draft, I want it to be as high probability as possible. So that to me is your clear RB2 if you can get it, and so forth. Since you had him too, who's your next guy?
So here's what I want. I'm gonna group a couple together.
Well, you gotta pick one.
No, I'm just gonna tell you they happen to be on the same team, so I'm going to kill two birds.
Okay, so you're choosing two guys right now.
No, I'm just having two takes. So I don't think so. This is again where it comes down to redraft versus best ball. In redraft, I would consider Worthy to be number 5, number 6 Worthy. So that's one take. He's nowhere near that on most of the ranking.
When you say 5 or 6, you mean like a top 10 wide receiver?
Yeah.
Okay.
So number 5 wide receiver, let's say. The only thing I would say again in redraft, because as a rookie wide receiver, he's going to have a learning curve in terms of making the same reads.
Oh, so maybe like second half of the season, he could be a top 5 guy.
Like second two-thirds, like the last 2/3 of the season. So that, and then in keeping with the Chiefs, Kelsey was my boy back in Cincinnati. He was my boy in the first season when he was hurt, and nobody knew about him in the second season. That's when I got to take him. So it doesn't come from anything other than love. Father Time has not.
Is there a emotional bias there?
Sure. Well, no. I'm actually no, because what I'm getting to is I am ready to let go. And I'm ready to say he's not top 4 tight end anymore. Or I can't take him before certain folks, right? So I can't take him before Ferguson. I can't take him before Kincaid. So he's and the thing is there's Andy Reid and the Chiefs in general are too good at coming up with ways at getting folks the ball to have to be married to one of them. So Kelsey has been there's been so much distance between he and anyone else that could ever try to cover him for so long. That door's starting to swing the other way a little bit. Not completely, but I'm ready to take folks in front of him. I never have before. If he's available.
Yeah, you can. So basically, your take is you want Worthy, and then you're anti-Kelsey, which is kind of we can get to. No, it's okay, dude. It's a hot topic right now. I think in fantasy is Laporta or Kelsey is your number 1 or 2. Is there another? So. Is it a Worthy thing, or are you a Rashid Rice guy now that Kelsey's not going to be there, or you're pretty much just saying Worthy's the guy with or without Rashid Rice?
So I'm saying Worthy's the guy because I'm in love with speed. Speed covers up a lot of warts.
It's like 4-2. It's crazy.
Speed is the beginning and the end of what matters to me, and even more so at that position. So they're going to be chomping at the bit to get him the ball. He's got to polish probably some of his reads. He's got to be on the same page as Pat. He will. But in the end, they're just going to throw it up and let him go get it. And it's Tyreek Hill all over again.
Yeah, no, he's electric. I'm kind of shocked that Buffalo let Kansas City get him. But again, it's almost like interesting. You see these coaches. Sometimes there's favorites and stuff, but the systems need certain guys, and so sometimes in this case it was a perfect fit. So I'm excited to see him. So when you say he's a hot take, you love him. We don't need to get too dramatic, but it sounds like you would take him, is pretty early. Like you would take him above a lot of other. And again, I have a hard stand against a lot of the guys in the 3rd and 4th round and the 5th. So to me, I have no problem. I would. You get him pretty much any day of the week in the 8th round. Definitely 7th, 8th for sure. Maybe even you could slip to the 9th, but definitely if you want to just take him, you want to take him to the 7th. So would you take him over Jaden Reed?
Mm-hmm.
You take him over Ladd McConkey?
I love Ladd, but yeah.
Would you take him over Calvin Ridley?
Oh yeah. Whoa. No, I would not.
Okay. Would you take him over Chris Godwin?
Yeah.
Over Terry McLaurin?
No.
Over Hollywood Brown?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like, you just think he's going to be a big part of that Chiefs offense. So, okay. Well, I'm going to ask you one last question, and then I'm going to go to my next guy. Would you take him over Deontay Johnson?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually want to say no, but
I'm glad you're thinking about it because that's the guy that I would put down as my number 4. Deontay Johnson has always been electric. I've seen him play forever at Pittsburgh. His separation's outstanding. He's been a victim of this awful Pittsburgh, regime, offensive coordinator, and so now he moves into a whole new situation the breath of fresh air, the smile on his face. He got paid. He's still playing for more money. It's not like it's all over. He's earning his keep. He's got a young quarterback that wants to prove himself. And he's got an offensive coordinator that's, going to run the ball a lot. But, I mean, let's face it, this guy is going to get pretty much the first look every single time down the field. Thielen's there, and the guy can come in and do some other damage. And I'm not sure, because, again, this is July. We don't know what the drum beats are going to be for the rookies. But to me, he is so reliable. And I love the fact that Carolina is going to be coming from behind. They're going to be in these situations where they got to throw the ball. Bryce is, got a lot to prove still, we know. But the matchups, whole outlook on this guy to me is just he's so like reliably like a 15-point guy for the season that getting him in the 7th round is like a treasure to me. So I take him almost. I think I'm at 35% of him on best ball, dog, and I'm like I've got him at least on half my teams in football guys, and I just smile every time if he falls to me in the 7th. I usually don't take him early in the 6th. So to me, I kind of got to keep my fingers crossed, but I do think he'll outperform his ADP by at least 2 rounds. So he's kind of like, if I was playing the horses and betting a pick 6, like he'd be a guy I'd probably single. So I'm willing to live and die on him. And to me, if you're going to be in best ball, the way you prove that is by going above like 30% on a guy. And so he's one of those guys. So anything you want to add on that guy, or are you? It sounds like you're into him a little bit, or do you like him enough?
I don't know. I frankly just want to stay away from Bryce, to be honest. I don't like saying that. It's I don't like the energy involved with it, but it's uncomfortable for me. So I don't want him to be the one throwing me the ball.
Yeah, no, that's probably the biggest knock on him. So, and it's an upgrade in some ways from Pickett, but it's a thing where and these are intuitions, right, that come to me. Like if I'm Bryce Young and you sign Deontay Johnson, I'm spending every waking hour with that guy. I'm playing video games with him like Josh Allen and Diggs did. I'm doing, late night dinners, watching movies. Like I'm literally learning every single thing, building the chemistry, building the trust, and then spending the hours, after practice and so forth. And I've heard a little bit that they've been connecting, but I mean, this is July. So to me, the whole idea right now is to take these chances on who could move up in the ADP. And the only way you're going to win $1 million in any of these things is to get ADP value. You have to get ADP value, and that's a guy that I don't think is going to go down, in terms of the draft position. So I will take that shot. And again, it's not just that. It's, do I want Jaden Reed? No, he's great. I crushed him. I had him 30% in best ball last year. Couldn't get to the finals. I just don't know with that talent of a wide receiving core what's going to happen. Rashid Rice, I love the guy too, but is he going to miss 4 games, 6 games? What's there's risk there. That McConkey, he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver there. It's a Harbaugh offense that doesn't really reward with Roman. Number 1 wide receivers really much more than like a wide receiver 15 or 20. And he could still outperform his ADP a little bit. But to me, the proof is in the pudding with Johnson. He's done pretty much everything asked of him, and now he gets a fresh start. I love it when great wide receivers are good. Let's call them good to great wide receiver get a chance to play with a new system, and hopefully Bryce is going to work this offseason to correct some of these things. But that's the big decision, because if I'm going to grab a wide receiver there, is it Ladd? Is it Rashid Rice? Is it Jaden Reed? Is it Christian? Well, I would take Deontay above Christian Watson, but it's close. So that's really the real decision.
So I'm going to come at it from a tactician's point of view, which is, to me, how I am beholden to that, because that determines performance, in my opinion. So, and I know that this is where I kind of zig where everyone else zags. So I would submit to you then, if that's your take on that team, that wide receiver, what other wide receiver, what other option for the quarterback scares you as a defense if you're facing them? Who do you need to worry about?
You mean on the Panthers?
Him. Yes, besides him.
Okay, so if you're saying like make it difficult for him to get the ball?
If I'm a defense and I'm looking at the offense in front of me, who am I worried about other than him?
Other than him? Well, so I'm going to answer that 2 ways. Number 1, you can't really guard him. He gets so much separation, it doesn't matter. So to me, it doesn't matter. No matter what you do, he can slant. He can break off. It's like he's going to get 8 to 10 targets almost every game. So and they're going to be behind.
Can I ask you what you're basing that on? Are you basing that on his history with Pittsburgh?
Just watching him.
Okay, with which team?
Pittsburgh.
Okay, so what I'm saying is you need.
But he was the number 1 wide receiver in Pittsburgh last year.
Okay, you need to apply. My philosophy is applying a coefficient to that, because you really are just guessing at what's going to happen this year, right? So you kind of, if you are going on tape, I'm applying a coefficient that I see when I watch the game, and
although some would say Pickens was right there with him. Okay, so to answer your question, if I'm going to scheme that team, I mean, obviously we don't know what Legette's like yet. He's good. Thielen's Thielen. They don't really have a tight end. Brooks is going to run the heck out of the ball once he gets healthy enough. So to me, this is why Carolina is going to win 4 or 5 games, right? They're gonna stuff the run. They're gonna stack the box, and they're gonna make Bryce throw.
So what I'm hearing you say is really no one scares you. So what I'm pointing out is why I would not pick him. To me, that's the perfect and really the only argument I would ever need to make about why I struggle with that. It's not about him. That's the stink of it.
Yeah.
Because of course I pick him. But as a defense, you're not putting the defense in much conflict.
Well, I think the bigger question on top of that is can Bryce get his team to score touchdowns?
Well,
because if Deontay doesn't score touchdowns, then this pick will be modest, or it'll be right where it was. Because to me, if he doesn't get a ton of touchdowns, then he's gonna be a 7th or 8th round ADP guy, which means it's a break even point. But to me, can Bryce get the ball in the end zone? Brooks is pretty freaking good too. So to me, they should be able to contend. There's a lot of variables going on in this, a lot. So when it's kind of like for me, it's like horse racing. It's like when there's a chaos horse race, you want value, and this is a guy you're taking in the 7th round. So it's not like I'm taking him in the 3rd or 4th round, which is why I wouldn't take a lot of these other wide receivers, because they're not necessarily in the same situation where they can just be the only guy, the only option. But I just see volume. Like volume is so important in fantasy. So to me, it's like the sure amount of volume. Like the only way you can outperform ADP at the wide receiver position really is targets, receptions, and touchdowns. So to me, is he going to get a ton of targets? Yes, I don't question that. And I think Brees is going to have to find somebody, and if Legette is better than people think, then maybe so that is one possibility. Jonathan Brooks is better than people think too. So if Bryce did work in the offseason, and they have a different regime in offense now. So if those 4 variables, if 1 or 2 of those come true, that lends myself to believe that 1, they're going to score potentially more touchdowns, and 2, that Deontay is going to maybe have not quite as much attention on him if Brooks fails, or if Legette fails. So there's just one of those 2 things. I feel one of those 2 players I think is going to do fairly well. So that's another part of the decision. But again, it's also about, do I want Matt McConkey in a heavy Harbaugh run offense, which we've seen for so many years in Greg Roman? Absolutely not. Or do I want to have a guy like Rashid Rice who's going to get suspended? I think he's amazing. He's incredible. I just don't want to lose 4 to 6 games. I'll take him on some of my teams, but I don't want to invest all in on him. But again, Jaden Reed, he's quality, but Christian Watson is clearly the number 1 in most people's minds when he's healthy. And he can get hurt again, and then Reed, does what he does what he did at the end of the year last year. But so to me, when you're looking for a wide receiver at that position, he's the guy. But how big is the gap? To me, it's significant enough to take that stand, because I honestly don't want any of those other guys, unless it's Christian Watson, which I'd rather take in the 8th round and hope that he slips to me. So that's why I'm thinking on a 7 or 8 axes level, I'm thinking okay, I need a 3rd wide receiver. The reason I need a 3rd wide receiver there is because when you get past the 10th round, it gets really difficult, or even the 9th round. It's once you get to the 9th round, I'm not comfortable with taking a lot of those guys. I'd rather just play the rookie game. And it's okay, well, maybe I can get Wicks, maybe I can get Jacob Myers, I guess, but it's not comfortable. So to me, I need 3 decent quality wide receivers, and to me, he's a 15-point guy. So my contention is, or my statement is, he is going to get 15 on average. He'll be a 15-point PPR guy by the end of the year, provided there's no injuries, provided nothing drastic happens. Something drastic happens, then I'm wrong. But if they suck and he is a 12 to 13-point guy, then I don't really lose anything. But if they suck and he's a 10-point guy, then I'm going to have all over my face and I'll shave his name in my side of my head or something.
Ooh. Did we just make it into? Or did you? Did you just make it interesting?
I will shave my head and put the geometric designs, and and go to Burning Man. But see, the thing is I would rather do that if you were taking a stand on a guy too. But that is definitely something.
I'll shape shit. I have more of a canvas. So for me, again, there's just in a universe that includes other options, there's too many knocks on him. I can't take him. But I would also say that, or maybe add a layer to your premise that 15 is what equals success and 12 to 13 equals breaking even.
Yeah.
To me, you're not taking into account the opportunity cost. How can you know what success or break even is unless you know in another universe what you could have otherwise picked? Because that person, let's say by the way, I would marry Ladd in a heartbeat. Dear God, I'd like to just hold, so to speak.
I mean, we've made a couple of references here. We've definitely got some things happening. I know you had a lot of guys on the back and fighted by football, and I have no problem. I love my gay fan.
When you go off the tee as a quarterback, you know you put your hands, right? Anyway,
sure.
All that to say that for me, it's too easy to the other options are just too better. Wow, great.
Well, yeah, good grammar. I do like Ladd. I do think he's going to be well. I don't. So again, with Ladd is again another most certainly 12 to 13 point guy. Like, you are not going to fail if you take him. So do you want to take a guy with upside to try to win $1 million, or do you want to play it safe? Now, you obviously are going to take the other stance on that. You're going to say there's upside there.
Yeah.
And I believe in Herbert, absolutely. My problem is I've seen too much Greg Roman. I've seen too many different wide receivers in that system. I can't get behind Harbaugh being a guy that's going to trust your rookie to get them over the top initially. So at the end of the season, if McConkey gets 18 to 20 points a game for the last 3 or 4 games, I wouldn't be surprised. But when you look at the aggregate over the whole season, are you going to even make the fantasy playoffs when Ladd McConkey takes 4, 5, 6 games to get there? It's like you look at the aggregate. Well, it's just too risky.
Best ball, no. Again, this is why there's so many. Oh gosh, I can't wait for the episode where we talk about best ball versus redraft and why best ball is ridiculous.
McConkey is definitely more interesting in best ball to me too.
Well, no, he's a more interesting pick for best ball to me. It speaks to why a redraft is just so much more fun. He becomes kind of moot unless you're playing redraft, because even though I would marry him, probably would not start him until week 3 or 4. So not really an option with best ball. So that's.
I mean, here's the thing: if you take Ladd in round 7, where you would have to take him, you might get him in the 8th at the very beginning. In FFPC Main Event, you start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 flexes, a tight end, and a quarterback. That means those are your cream of the crop top 8 guys. If you take him in round 7, now you better find a badass in round 9 to start for those 4, 5, 6 games that it's going to take him to get that learning curve up, or you're going to be 2 and 4 in the playoffs, and then you're not going to make the fantasy playoffs, and it's not even going to matter. So in redraft, it gets more difficult to take him for me. But again, in best ball, you have so many other draft options at wide receivers. So for the long run, you can get through that by getting a guy like Wicks or Myers or Leggett or some other Burton or some of these other guys that might have an early kickstart, whatever. So to me, it's just I can't talk anybody off of him. He's reliably a legit 12 to 13 point guy in the PPR. But would I want to bet my money, my $2,000 on him over Deontay Johnson to try and get to a big score? Because the way I'm going to win that million is by having 3 guys basically explode, and I need them to outperform ADP, and I got to be right on the other guys too. I got to be right on my main guys. They have to do what they're supposed to do, and then I need basically 3 guys to explode, and they don't all have to explode at the same time, but they have to explode. And I just see way more explosion with Deontay than I do Ladd. Ladd to me is the safest bet. He's I don't know, just it's like putting your money on a mutual fund. But to me, Deontay is like a startup in AI. Well, not even that, because he's not that. The Worthy is more like a startup in AI, because he can just go off. But Deontay is a startup that has chosen the right market maybe they're not first to market, but they're in a position where they can take advantage of other businesses that are not addressing like all of the value that the product needs. And again, there's still some chinks in Bryce's armor, like no question. And there's a bet there, but I've seen guys, do that in the past that can just hit that safety blanket. And because they don't have a tight end, I just feel like he's the tight end. But again, Adam Thielen did that last year and he exploded. That's another thing, is you saw what Adam Thielen did, and you saw the level of comfort, and Carolina only had Adam Thielen. So it's not like, again, they can learn from one season to the next, but the second book's going to be Adam Bryce. But at that point in the draft, I'm willing to do that because I want a tight end in the first, four or five rounds. I want a quarterback early. I want 2 running backs early. I want 2 quality wide receivers early. So when you start to get around 7, I'm not looking to try and get a quarterback late necessarily as my main $2,000 investment. So again, that's kind of like giving you more clarity on it, but I don't have any issue with you challenging Bryce. So I mean, it would probably be writing Bryce's name and shaving that inside my head rather than Deontay's, because Deontay is not Deontay without Bryce. But I could maybe come up with some kind of initial that would just stay between us. Okay, so I had one other guy. Did you have another guy that you wanted to bring up?
I just want to say, and this again is uncomfortable. I don't like the energy, but I feel a responsibility. So when I saw Joe Burrow shake his hand when he got hurt last year, I knew what it was. And it's because I tore the same ligament in my wrist. Or I tore a ligament in my wrist. I'm assuming it's the same or similar. And I don't know if anyone is really appreciating the mechanics of a football throw and what happens to that joint, the leverage or the torque that's wielded against it. So I'm not saying he's going to have a bad year. I'm just a little uncomfortable with his durability this year. I don't know how durable that fix is going to be. I know that because they fixed it immediately, it's definitely, it should be good. It's just, and he's another guy I would marry if I could. I've loved him forever. I loved him at Ohio State for crying out loud when he wasn't even playing. So I love him. It's uncomfortable though for me. And
so you're taking a stand against him. So this isn't a guy you like. Is there? Okay, so let's talk.
That's the stand I'm taking, and I don't like it. It's just like the Kelsey one. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's icky. I don't like it.
Okay, yeah. So that makes me, really. I mean, on one end, I feel sad because I really was looking forward to Joe Burrow playing this year, and I felt like, as we talked last year, when I was pretty high on the Chiefs all year long, and definitely in the playoffs, as you know, and beating the Bills and so forth. But I thought the one team that could beat them was the Bengals if they could keep together, and they couldn't. Burrow is, to me, going to win a Super Bowl. I don't know when, and I am saying that just because I love how cool and calm he is back there, and I don't know. And he's already had some issues with his legs. He's got this wrist thing. It's a problem.
Maybe.
I don't. I'm not a doctor, and I know that you've had some personal experience with this. I want to see again. So this is why we're doing this. This is July. You can get Burrow in the 8th round. If he throws the ball great, you're still going to get him in the 8th round. If he throws the ball poorly, if there's issues, he's going to drop to the 10th. So there's no reason to take him. So I agree with you. I agree with your take. There's no reason to take him now in this situation in a season-long league without seeing more positive situations. So there's not a lot of upside right now. You could still get him in the 8th in 2 months, and then if he crushes it, you've seen enough in training camp or whatever in preseason, you're like, yeah, he's back, he's fine. Now, that doesn't mean that he can get hit again on the hand, and then it's a problem too. But
that's the thing, is that's what happens all the time.
Yeah, and you can get the helmet. Who knows? So I am not going to subscribe to this. I'm going to take the opposite approach. I would say draft away on Burrow in best ball for sure, especially as late as he goes. And I would take him naked even. I would love him with Chase, but I would absolutely take him naked if you get him late, which goes back to some of my thoughts on relationship anarchy, which is looking at the whole best ball mantra that you got to take, you got to stack away, you got to stack this many things. And I would counter that because I actually think you need to be different. And sometimes the way to be different is not to stack completely. if you're at the last 3 or 4 rounds stack away, if you're in the first, if you get Chase or get, CD with Dak, whatever, like some of these guys, fine. But I do think you sacrifice some ADP by trying to overstack, and you take guys early just for the stack. You take multiple guys on the team. So anyway, my point is draft Joe Burrow in best ball for me, no problem. So I'm going to go against you there. Redraft, I'm not going to, it's a wait and see approach, but I still want a better quarterback than that anyway. So I'm not going to have a lot of Burrow in redraft. I might get him on one team if for whatever reason all my quarterbacks were to go away. If I couldn't get Stroud at that point, to me, taking a Jordan Love or a Joe Burrow or a Jaden Daniels, or Trevor Lawrence or maybe a Purdy or Goff, at that point it's all going to depend on the draft layout. I would not be an anti-Burrow guy, but I hear what you're saying. There's some queasiness there, and there's queasiness with Kelsey too. So I'm with you, but I do want to add in. There's one other guy that I will say. So did you have any other guys you liked per se, or anybody else that you wanted a hard yes, like an F yes on?
Yeah, let's hear your last guy.
I mean, there's 2 of them. I'm just gonna say it's if I'm in the second half of the draft, 6 through 12, and I'm looking for a wide receiver, which is very possible, I'm going to be taking Tank Dell, despite the injury, which is a lot, despite the addition of Diggs, and despite Nico Collins being Nico Collins and Joe Mixon coming on board. I just feel that their chemistry and their ability to, he can make big plays. And again, I was a little skeptical at the beginning. I didn't draft a ton of them last year. I actually drafted him in my main event team. But there's something special about him. And it's the numbers are there. We had enough spike weeks. We will see if Nico is going to be Nico when Tank Dell is back and they're lining up from each other and Diggs is there. Because if I'm CJ Stroud, I already know that Tank Dell and Nico Collins are there for me, and Diggs is going to be kind of an afterthought, and he can be a big smokescreen, and I know it's going to create some contention. But I just feel that the value at that position, getting him basically third in the 5th round when people are taking Diggs earlier than him and Nico almost in early 3rd, it feels that ickiness to me. So I would definitely stand strong on Tank Dell as my 3rd wide receiver this year, and maybe the 2nd if I'm going to take a little bolder stance early and get a quarterback or a tight end early, and I don't have the position locked up. But I do like Tank Dell to finish above expectation. So anyway, I'm sure I feel like everyone likes him. Do you have any thoughts on it?
To me, I would just qualify what you said and say I wouldn't even say despite the injury. That doesn't even show up on my radar, especially the kind of injury it was. Not even it doesn't. There's exactly zero to me. Exactly zero reason to choose him other than, and you kind of, to your point, there is a little bit of a volume question, but just because Stroud's in a kid in a candy store, but
one of those 3 wide receivers is not going to reach ADP, and I tend to believe that the safest bet is to take the 3rd. It's like in a horse race. If you like 3 horses and you think them all the same, just take the 3rd choice. Like every time, if you're really accurate and your probability is right, just take the 3rd choice, bet him to win. And yeah, I just there's that body emotional, intuitive feeling that you get when you see him, when you see a player, or you see a horse, perform, and you're just like, I'm confident, and I'm confident in him. And yeah, Tony Pollard had a leg injury that was, I don't know how similar, but when you break something and it's traumatic, it can mess with you mentally. But Tank Dell's young enough. CJ Stroud's known him forever. I just think it's easy. So that's not too big of a take, but I would take him above Christian Kirk. I would take him above George Pickens. I would take him. Amari Cooper is. I would definitely probably take Amari. I don't know. It's pretty close. I'm talking again mostly right now about redrafts. So when I'm talking about FFPC, that's more important. But yeah, I would take Tank Dell above Amari Cooper in best ball most likely. But again, it's close. And then I definitely would take him above DK Metcalf and Flowers and Devontae Smith, DJ Moore, even Deebo Samuel is interesting, but there's some other reasons why I would potentially want Dell, because you have to take Deebo earlier anyway, and I would definitely take him above Diggs. So that's that. I'm tempted to say Aaron Jones. I'm tempted to put it out there. Aaron Jones is gonna be a lot better this year than people think. Again, we can save that for another conversation, but I believe in this guy. I know that the whole situation in Green Bay fell apart and LaFleur wanted him. I'm not a huge Ty Chandler guy. I had him last year. I had him like in 30% of my teams in best ball. It still can get to the finals. Ty Chandler's fine. I don't think Ty Chandler is going to reach the level of excellence that Aaron Jones will when the pressure is on. It's a tape play. Aaron Jones still has it on the tape for me. And yeah, he could easily fall off a cliff at some point. I just don't think it's going to happen this year. And I know he's like 29 now or whatever, or 22, 30 or whatever. It's like right around that 29 to 30-year-old range. The matchups, the system, I think there's too much value at taking him in the 6th round. Like if he was in the 5th round, I'd be like not making the statement. But in the 6th round, I'm going to put it out there a little bit as a soft, little extra 5.5 take thing. Did you have a strong opinion on Aaron Jones?
Again, he's another guy I love, but I'm getting ready to let go. Mostly getting ready to let go. I know he's close to the cliff. Some people have him halfway off of it. I know he looked good toward the end of last year. I will say this: I'm not ready to totally let him go. I love him as long as they use him correctly. So at this point in his career, he needs to be long handoffs. So just like the Rachaad White play, you're using him correctly if you get him in space and don't make him get himself in space. So you just short little passes, long handoffs. If you do that with him, he's going to be solid this year. We'll see if that's how they use him. But
and between Darnold and McCarthy, like it just feels like he'll be like a nice little like dump off guy. And again, Ty Chandler could easily get there, but they made the move to sign Aaron Jones. Like they didn't have to sign Aaron Jones. They could have said, all right, Ty Chandler's our guy and we'll draft a running back. They didn't do that. So I was bullish on Ty Chandler last year based on small sample size, and I saw more this year, and I'm like, he's good. But there's a lot of guys that are good. But I'm looking for the potential explosion. Aaron Jones has exploded so many times in the past that he can just go off and go ham. So I'm gonna like say that's a guy that I will be very, very interested in, as he gets into the 6th. Okay, so last kind of topic to wrap up with is really just like taking stands on guys we don't like, and I know you've done that a few times. I wanted to maybe mention one more guy or two that I was going to go against. Did you have anybody else that you want to go against this year?
Not that's sexy. No.
Okay. I mean, I think the biggest one that I'll put my neck on the line for is just Derrick Henry, and I know Derrick Henry is going to be Derrick Henry, and he is a lion. He is everything. Like I would be intimidated just walking next to him, even though I like his person. I appreciate his humility. I love the way he can just bulldoze and then just turn it on and like to fit the 6th gear. I'm skeptical of him, and yes, what my take is, if you're gonna get him in the 2nd round, like, and you're gonna take him over Kyren or Asian or Etienne or, I mean, maybe even Mark Andrews for me. Like, if you're going to take him over those guys, I just feel nervous. I feel nervous because he is at that cliff point, and we know what happens. And just like Aaron Jones, I think I'm going to wait one more year. But Derrick Henry, like, I'm not going to wait one more year. And I'm not going to wait one more year because you're taking him in the 2nd round. Yeah, he's going to get a lot of touchdowns. I think the over-under is like 7 or 8, and everyone's talking way more than that. And I'm like, there's a reason it's 7 or 8, right? But there's a reason because, number one, the offensive line is not the same. And that's like the biggest thing that I just don't understand why no one's really talking about. Like when you lose guys in the offensive line and you have like a whole new offensive coordinator, it just feels uncomfortable. It feels like, yeah, he's got the name Derrick Henry. Everybody knows who he is. He's a beast. Yeah, and guess what? Lamar Jackson's a beast. Lamar Jackson can easily just fake it to Derrick Henry and run it in himself every time. So to me, if Lamar sees Derrick Henry struggle and not be able to get off those initial, kind of like 3rd and goal, like 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 things, Lamar's going to take it over because Lamar's hungry this year and he's definitely going to be, a bit greedy if I were to guess. So to me, Lamar wants to win. Lamar can take it in his own hands. And so the Lamar factor, the new coach, the new offensive coordinator, the fact they've lost two offensive linemen, the fact that, they're just, to me, they're just slightly overrated. And they have a lot of pressure on themselves. They play they play against a lot of good defenses this year, especially coming off that record. And they play a lot of close games. It's like it's a situation that doesn't lend itself for me. Again, if you're betting on Derrick Henry, you're betting on him getting more than 10 or 12 touchdowns a year. That's your call. Okay, that's your call. And I don't feel comfortable based on what I've seen from him and the tape and just all these other things that he is going to be the Derrick Henry of old. I've seen enough now where I'm like, okay, I will take the upside of Kyren, I will take the upside of Achane or Etienne over him every time. No question about it. And even after that, if you're going into the third round and you're coming around that turn, I'd probably take Nico over Derrick Henry. Like I just would. Or even maybe Mike Evans. And then if you get to the end, Evan Ingram. So to me, it's all about not just Derrick Henry. It's about Derrick Henry versus those other guys. And I can find little holes in Kyren being kind of coming out of nowhere. Achane being, injury prone. But my God, he's just a phenomenal specimen. And even Kyren too. He's like a fairy on the field that has got, he's just ripped and yoked. And I looked at Etienne and I volume because there's nobody else there in the backfield that's really going to get it. And he had a massive improvement last year. So I'll take the upside guys versus the kind of fallen champion, father time, long in the tooth thing. So I'm very happy when people take Derrick Henry above those guys. So that is a treat for me. And I pray for that every time I play in these season long drafts. And even in best ball, I think I'm going to have probably 0 to 3% Derrick Henry. So to me, that's a big take. I'll take 0 to 3% him. I'll take no Joe Mixon whatsoever. Very little Josh Jacobs. Other than that, I guess, those are probably my biggest stands against the running back position. I'm not going to take a hard stand against any of the quarterbacks. They're all pretty amazing, and this and that. Same with the tight ends. Dalton Kincaid in the second round is. I'm not going to say no if you want to do that. I just don't want to do it. But I could never advise anyone to take Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, or Josh Jacobs this year. So, well, what do you want to say about Henry?
The only thing I would say is, he's headed for or mid-cliff at this point. And you're talking to a guy, again, I love him. I have married him every year. I loved him at Yulee High School, watched him stomp at Yulee High School. So I am a Derrick Henry apologist. And I just can't this year. So I agree with you. To me, the football people are all saying that. So I'm not saying the fantasy football people, but I think just from a talent evaluation, or not talent, just a football evaluation, that it's time. So yeah, love him, but I just can't.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that for the most part, this is cool. It's the first time we've really talked about our guys. So it's nice to see that there is some alignment there. It gives me more confidence because I haven't even talked to you about all the teams I've drafted up into this point. And I'm glad that we're more than probably 70. Well, yeah, definitely half in alignment with a lot of this. In order to win these things, so there's two things I wanted to wrap up with. One is hitting your number, right? So you can hit a number let's say Deontay Johnson ends at 12 or 13 points per PPR points per game. Okay, I hit my number, fine. I draft him in the 7th round, but I'm going beyond that, saying he's going to finish at 15 or above. So that's a take. I'm also going to say that when I choose these guys, I'm basing it on trying to win $1 million. I'm not basing it on trying to finish and just get into the playoffs and scrape by and finish in the top 50 or 60 or 100. So to me, I have to take serious stances on players, which means in best ball taking 30 to 40% of guys on 3 or 4 or 5 guys, and then taking 0% chances on probably half the field. And that sounds like a lot, but anytime a guy drops 8, 10 ADP points, I'm probably going to take him. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you're choosing between the 5, 6, 7 guys every time, are you going to walk away from people and just say no? And I do that in horse racing, and it works. So to me, being bold is really healthy, and that's the way you get to $1 million. And you got to be right. I'll put it this way: if Deontay Johnson or Achane or Etienne or Connor Williams or Mike Evans or Rashad White or Evan Ingram or, my God, 5th round, I would say even Tank Dell, maybe Aaron Jones, right? If 3 of those 4 guys crush, I want to know that I covered as many permutations as possible. So that's, I guess, the big take on these takes is this philosophy is to go big or go home. Because when I'm right, if I'm really right, I want to be rewarded. Because it would be really make me sick to my stomach if I just was playing ADP and just taking guys and trying to cover like all these combinations based on just the most conservative way of playing this game. So I think the bold nature of playing horses to my level and being the number one tournament player in the country over the last 10 years, it's really important to do this. So anyway, I think that pretty much gives you a good glimpse of my strategy, but I think like some people, would argue till the cows come home that that's not the way to do it. And I will do more podcasts about this, about really digging into the ways to be different, to be smart, to have your value. But again, I'm trying to call my shots. I'm trying to say that Deontay could be a 15 plus guy. I'm going to say that Evan Ingram could be an 18 plus guy at the tight end position. So I need the league winner guys, right, to do this. And so I'm going to live and die by my guys. And yeah, if I can't get my guys, then I will pivot and I will have to come up with different strategies. But what I won't is I'm not going to take a guy I don't like. I'm not going to take Derrick Henry. I'm not going to take Mixon. I'm not going to take Josh Jacobs. So there's certain people, and there's not a ton of them, but when you go through the rounds, in the third and fourth rounds, I don't really like as many of the wide receivers and so forth and so on. So we'll go deeper into this as the season gets a little bit better or longer, or we get more information from the drum beats and some of the injuries and stuff. But awesome takes, Chad. Really appreciate you coming on and us doing this finally. We've been talking about this for years. We have so many crazy calls that come through and so many that fail, but it was time to do something like this. And yeah, I mean, we'll have to talk about whether or not you're going to do an FFPC fantasy team for $350 a share or a bigger one, but I think it'd be fun to watch you compete against the big boys too.
Well, listen, thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for your genius. My gosh, finishing 15th, the main event, no happy accident. So I'll leave everyone with two things. Going back to Saquon, you heard it right here. He's going to be at about 1,250, 1,300 yards this year and about 750, 800 yards receiving. He's going to stomp. Crucially, though, if you're not getting dirty, you're not doing it right.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. We'll hit you back. This is Raw or Die. You can find me at Raw or Die on Twitter, and you'll see more of these coming through. All right. Peace.